What if I told you that most people spend their entire lives chasing happiness in the wrong direction? They chase it through money, relationships, approval, achievements, and comfort, only to feel empty the moment those things disappear, change, or fail them. Stoicism begins with a hard truth most people don't want to hear. Anything outside of you is unstable. And if your happiness depends on unstable things, then your happiness itself will always be fragile. That's why so many people feel good only briefly, then fall right back into anxiety, comparison, and dissatisfaction. Stoics didn't deny pleasure or success, but they warned against mistaking them for peace. The Stoics understood something modern culture constantly forgets. Happiness is not something you acquire, it's something you practice. External events don't create lasting happiness because you don't control them. You can lose money, people can leave, your health can change, your reputation can be damaged by rumors or misunderstandings. If your emotional state rises and falls with these things, you are essentially handing your inner life over to forces that do not care about you. Stoicism teaches that real happiness begins the moment you stop outsourcing your peace to the outside world. One of the core Stoic ideas is simple but uncomfortable. It's not what happens to you that disturbs you. It's how you interpret what happens to you. Two people can experience the same event and feel completely different about it. One feels defeated, the other remains steady. This is not luck or personality, it's perspective. The Stoics believed your thoughts are the gateway to your emotional life. If you don't learn to guide your thinking, your emotions will guide you instead, often into stress, resentment, and fear. Modern life trains people to believe happiness comes after something happens, after the promotion, after the relationship, after validation arrives. Stoicism flips this idea completely. It says, happiness is a byproduct of character, not circumstance. If you cultivate self-discipline, self-respect, emotional control, and clarity, peace follows naturally. If you don't, no amount of success will save you from inner chaos. That's why you see people who have everything, yet live in constant anxiety and dissatisfaction. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external rewards always demand more. Once you get what you wanted, the mind quickly moves the goalpost. The car isn't enough anymore. The relationship loses its excitement. The achievement fades. The Stoics noticed this pattern long before psychology named it. They understood that desire, when left unchecked, becomes a trap, keeping people permanently restless. Inner happiness breaks this cycle by teaching contentment without complacency. You can still strive, but without emotional dependence on the outcome. Stoicism also challenges the belief that avoiding discomfort leads to happiness. In reality, comfort often weakens the mind. When people avoid discomfort at all costs, they become fragile, easily shaken by minor problems. The Stoics believed inner happiness is strengthened by learning to endure discomfort without panic. Cold mornings, delayed gratification, emotional restraint, these were not punishments, but training. When you prove to yourself that you can survive discomfort, fear loses its power over you. Another powerful Stoic insight is that happiness increases when you stop obsessing over how others perceive you. Seeking approval hands control of your emotional state to strangers, co-workers, family members, and even people who don't like you. Stoicism teaches that your worth is not a vote taken by the crowd. It's determined by your actions, your integrity, and your consistency. When you stop needing to be liked, praised, or validated, a quiet confidence replaces anxiety. True happiness also grows when you accept reality instead of constantly arguing with it. Many people suffer not because life is cruel, but because they resist what already is. They replay the past. They fight things they can't change. They resent outcomes that are already locked in. Stoicism teaches acceptance without passivity. You accept reality not because you like it, but because refusing it only adds unnecessary suffering. The Stoics also believed inner happiness comes from living in alignment with your values. When your actions contradict your principles, inner tension forms. Guilt, self-doubt, and shame quietly erode peace. But when you act with honesty, restraint, and courage, even when it costs you something, you gain something more valuable: self-trust. And self-trust is one of the deepest sources of inner happiness available to a human being. Another reason happiness must come from within is that emotions are temporary by nature. Even joy fades. Stoicism doesn't promise constant happiness. It promises stability. Instead of chasing emotional highs, Stoics aimed for calm, grounded contentment. This kind of peace doesn't disappear when life gets difficult. It doesn't require everything to go your way. It exists beneath the surface, steady and reliable, even during chaos. The Stoics were not emotionally numb. They felt grief, loss, frustration, and disappointment. The difference was they didn't let emotions rule them. They observed emotions without becoming them. This emotional distance creates freedom. When you are no longer controlled by anger, envy, or fear, happiness becomes less about feeling good and more about being unshaken. Inner happiness also grows when you focus on what is within your control and release what isn't. You control your effort, your attitude, your discipline, and your responses. You do not control outcomes, other people, or timing. Most anxiety comes from confusing these two categories. The moment you clearly separate them, mental noise reduces, peace increases, and life becomes lighter even when challenges remain. Stoicism ultimately teaches that happiness is not found in escaping life, but in meeting it fully, without illusion, without dependency, and without fear. When you stop chasing happiness outside yourself, you stop running. And when you stop running, something surprising happens. The peace you were searching for starts to catch up to you. When happiness comes from within, setbacks lose their ability to destroy you. They still hurt, but they don't define you. Stoicism teaches that pain is a part of life, but suffering is often optional. Suffering happens when we tell ourselves that something shouldn't have happened, that life has wronged us, or that we can't move forward because of what occurred. Inner happiness grows when you stop framing hardship as a personal attack and start seeing it as a neutral event that tests your character. The test is not whether life is fair, but whether you remain steady when it isn't. Most people don't realize how much mental energy they waste resisting uncertainty. They want guarantees about love, money, health, and the future. Stoicism removes the illusion that certainty is possible. Instead of promising security, it teaches preparedness. When you accept that change is inevitable, you stop being shocked by it. You stop feeling betrayed by reality. Inner happiness comes from being mentally ready for loss, change, and delay, not from pretending they won't happen. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external success often creates fear instead of peace. The more you gain, the more you fear losing it. Status brings anxiety. Praise creates pressure. Wealth invites comparison. Stoics noticed that people who tie their identity to external wins become prisoners of maintenance. Inner happiness frees you from this trap because your sense of self doesn't rise or fall with circumstances. You enjoy success without clinging to it. Stoicism also reveals how much unhappiness comes from living in imagined futures. Anxiety is rarely about what's happening now. It's about what might happen later. The Stoics believed peace exists almost entirely in the present moment. When your attention stays grounded in what you can do today, fear loses its fuel. Inner happiness grows when you stop borrowing trouble from futures that may never arrive. Another overlooked Stoic idea is that happiness increases when you reduce unnecessary desires. This doesn't mean living without ambition. It means not being ruled by endless wants. Every desire creates a condition for dissatisfaction. When your happiness depends on getting something you don't yet have, you postpone peace indefinitely. Stoics practiced wanting less, not because life is empty, but because clarity feels better than craving. Inner happiness also deepens when you stop taking everything personally. Many people assume others' actions are about them. Disrespect, rejection, silence, criticism. Stoicism teaches that most people act from their own fears, conditioning, and limitations. When you internalize this, resentment loosens its grip. You respond instead of react. You conserve emotional energy, and that emotional conservation quietly becomes peace. Stoicism teaches that discipline is not punishment, it's freedom. When you can control impulses, emotions, and reactions, you stop being at the mercy of moods. Inner happiness isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about not being dragged down every time something goes wrong. Discipline creates reliability within yourself. You become someone you can depend on, regardless of circumstances. Another source of inner happiness is learning to be okay with being misunderstood. Many people exhaust themselves trying to explain, defend, or justify their choices. Stoics believed your job is to live well, not to convince everyone you are. When you stop chasing explanation and acceptance, mental noise fades, silence becomes lighter, and peace becomes less fragile. Stoicism also emphasizes gratitude, not as forced positivity, but as realism. You are alive. You have agency. You have the ability to choose your response. These facts remain true even during difficulty. Inner happiness grows when you notice what remains intact instead of obsessing over what is missing. Gratitude grounds you in sufficiency rather than lack. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external distractions eventually fail. Entertainment, consumption, and stimulation can numb discomfort temporarily, but they don't resolve it. Stoics believed that facing discomfort directly builds strength, while avoiding it builds dependency. Inner happiness forms when you stop running from yourself and start observing your thoughts, fears, and habits honestly. Stoicism teaches that peace is not passive, it is earned through clarity. When you understand what truly matters and let go of what doesn't, your life becomes simpler. Fewer mental battles, fewer emotional swings, fewer unnecessary conflicts. Inner happiness emerges not because life becomes easy, but because you stop making it harder than it already is. Inner happiness also grows when you stop measuring your life against other people's timelines. Comparison quietly poisons peace. You look at where others are, financially, emotionally, socially, and assume you're behind. Stoicism reminds us that everyone carries a different burden, a different starting point, and a different set of challenges that are often invisible. When you stop using others as a measuring stick, you return to your own path, and peace returns with it. Stoics believed that much unhappiness comes from confusing pleasure with fulfillment. Pleasure is immediate and short-lived. Fulfillment is quiet and lasting. Pleasure asks, how does this make me feel right now? Fulfillment asks, does this align with who I'm trying to become? Inner happiness grows when you start choosing actions that build long-term self-respect instead of short-term comfort. Another Stoic insight is that your inner world improves when you accept responsibility for your emotional life. Many people blame circumstances, people, or past experiences for how they feel. Stoicism doesn't deny that life can be unfair. It simply refuses to let unfairness control your inner state. When you take responsibility for how you respond, you reclaim power. And power, when handled wisely, becomes peace. Stoicism also teaches that silence is often healthier than constant expression. Not every thought deserves to be spoken. Not every emotion needs to be released immediately. Emotional restraint is not repression, it's discernment. When you learn to pause before reacting, you protect your inner calm, and over time, that calm becomes your default state. Inner happiness strengthens when you learn to let go of the need to be right. Arguments, grudges, and pride drain emotional energy. Stoics believed that being at peace is often more valuable than winning. When you stop fighting every disagreement, your nervous system rests, your mind clears, and relationships become lighter, even when disagreements remain. Another key Stoic lesson is that identity should be built on values, not roles. Jobs change, relationships shift, titles disappear. If your sense of self is tied to these things, inner stability collapses when they do. Stoicism encourages anchoring identity in qualities that can't be taken away: integrity, courage, patience, self-control. When your identity is rooted here, happiness becomes harder to disrupt. Stoics also recognized that fear often disguises itself as logic. People say they are being realistic when they are actually avoiding discomfort or risk. Inner happiness requires honest self-examination. When you catch fear pretending to be wisdom, you regain clarity. And clarity reduces anxiety more effectively than reassurance ever could. Inner happiness deepens when you stop replaying past mistakes as if they can still be changed. Regret keeps people mentally trapped. Stoicism teaches learning without self-punishment. You extract the lesson, adjust your behavior, and move forward. Carrying shame longer than necessary only delays peace. Another reason happiness must come from within is because life is unpredictable by nature. Stoics didn't wait for stability to feel calm. They trained for instability. When you expect disruption, you're less shaken by it. Inner happiness grows when you are mentally flexible, not emotionally rigid. Stoicism also teaches the importance of daily reflection. Without reflection, habits control you unconsciously. With reflection, you gain awareness. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. Inner happiness emerges when you consistently examine your thoughts, reactions, and priorities instead of living on autopilot. Inner peace strengthens when you stop seeking emotional intensity as proof of meaning. Not every meaningful life is dramatic. Stoics valued quiet consistency over emotional highs. They believed a stable, steady mind was a sign of wisdom, not boredom. Happiness, in this sense, feels calm, not explosive. Another overlooked Stoic idea is that kindness toward others improves your inner world, not because others deserve it, but because resentment corrodes the person holding it. Compassion lightens emotional load. Forgiveness reduces mental friction. Inner happiness increases when you stop carrying emotional weight that serves no purpose. Stoicism teaches that happiness is not something you chase. It's something that remains when unnecessary suffering is removed. When you let go of illusions, comparisons, entitlement, and emotional dependency, what's left is not emptiness. What's left is clarity, and clarity feels like peace. Inner happiness also grows when you stop expecting life to feel fair. Many people carry a quiet belief that if they do the right things, life should reward them in equal measure. When that expectation is broken, bitterness forms. Stoicism teaches a different view. Life doesn't owe you comfort, clarity, or reward, but it does give you constant opportunities to strengthen your character. When you release the expectation of fairness, you stop feeling cheated by reality, and peace becomes easier to maintain. Another Stoic insight is that many people confuse busyness with purpose. They stay constantly occupied to avoid sitting with themselves, but noise does not equal meaning. Stoics valued stillness because it reveals truth. When distractions fade, you see what actually drives you: your fears, your attachments, your habits. Inner happiness grows when you are no longer afraid of silence, because silence stops being empty and starts becoming grounding. Stoicism also teaches that emotional pain often comes from wanting life to match a mental story you created. You imagine how things should unfold, how people should behave, how outcomes should look. When reality disagrees, frustration follows. Inner happiness increases when you loosen your grip on these internal scripts and respond to what is actually happening, not what you hoped would happen. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external praise is inconsistent and unreliable. Today, you're celebrated, tomorrow, ignored. Stoics warned that attaching self-worth to praise creates emotional whiplash. When your confidence comes from knowing you acted with integrity, approval becomes optional rather than necessary. And when approval is optional, peace becomes more stable. Stoicism also challenges the idea that happiness requires constant motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Discipline remains. Inner happiness grows when you rely less on how you feel and more on what you've decided matters. When action is guided by values instead of mood, life feels more grounded and less chaotic. Inner peace strengthens when you accept that discomfort often signals growth. Many people retreat the moment something feels hard or unfamiliar. Stoics believed resistance builds strength, while avoidance builds fragility. When you lean into difficulty without panic, you discover that you are more capable than you assumed. That realization alone reduces fear. Another Stoic lesson is that you don't need to have everything figured out to live well. Anxiety often comes from believing clarity must come first. Stoicism teaches action before certainty. You focus on doing the next right thing, even without full understanding. Inner happiness grows when you trust yourself to adapt instead of demanding perfect foresight. Stoicism also reframes loss. Loss is not only something that takes away, it reminds you that nothing was guaranteed to begin with. This awareness sharpens appreciation and reduces entitlement. Inner happiness deepens when gratitude is rooted in realism, not optimism. Another overlooked Stoic idea is that emotional resilience improves when you stop labeling feelings as good or bad. Emotions are signals, not commands. When you observe them without judgment, they pass more quickly. Inner happiness increases when emotions are experienced without being amplified by resistance. Stoics believed that consistency builds peace. When your words match your actions and your actions match your values, inner conflict fades. Many people feel restless because they are divided against themselves. Alignment quiets that division, and quiet feels like relief. Inner happiness also grows when you stop trying to control how life unfolds and focus instead on how you show up. Control creates tension. Presence creates steadiness. When you bring attention to effort instead of outcome, pressure dissolves. Stoicism teaches that happiness is not fragile. It becomes fragile only when tied to things that can be taken away. When happiness is rooted in mindset, discipline, and clarity, it remains available even during hardship. This doesn't make life painless, but it makes it livable without emotional collapse. Inner happiness deepens when you stop seeing restlessness as a problem to fix and start seeing it as a signal to listen. Many people feel uneasy and immediately try to distract themselves. Stoicism encourages awareness instead of escape. When you sit with restlessness, you often discover unmet values, neglected priorities, or unnecessary fears driving it. Inner peace grows when you address the cause rather than numb the feeling. Stoicism also teaches that self-respect is one of the most underrated sources of happiness. When you consistently do what you said you would do, especially when no one is watching, you build trust with yourself. That trust becomes quiet confidence, and quiet confidence doesn't depend on circumstances. It stays with you even when external conditions are unstable. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external certainty never arrives. Many people delay contentment, telling themselves they'll relax once things settle down. Stoics understood that life does not settle, it moves. Inner happiness develops when you stop waiting for perfect conditions and learn to remain steady within imperfect ones. Stoicism also warns against living in extremes. Emotional highs often lead to emotional crashes. Excessive optimism can be as destabilizing as constant pessimism. Stoics aimed for balance, clear-eyed realism paired with inner calm. This balance protects happiness from volatility and emotional burnout. Inner peace strengthens when you stop mistaking reaction for honesty. Saying everything you feel may feel authentic, but it often creates regret. Stoicism values thoughtful response over emotional discharge. When you choose words carefully, you protect relationships and preserve self-respect. Over time, this restraint becomes freeing rather than restrictive. Another Stoic insight is that simplicity reduces suffering. Many people complicate their lives with unnecessary commitments, possessions, and obligations. Stoicism encourages removing what doesn't serve clarity or virtue. As life simplifies, mental noise reduces, and with less noise, happiness has space to exist. Inner happiness also grows when you accept that not everyone will understand your choices. Stoics believed approval is unstable, but self-alignment is durable. When you live according to your values, misunderstanding becomes tolerable, and tolerable misunderstandings no longer disturb inner peace. Stoicism teaches that emotional endurance is a skill, not a trait. You become resilient by practicing resilience. Each time you face discomfort without avoidance, your nervous system learns that difficulty is survivable. Inner happiness expands as fear shrinks. Another overlooked Stoic idea is that clarity often feels boring compared to chaos. Many people are accustomed to emotional turbulence, so peace feels unfamiliar. Stoics understood that calm doesn't provide constant stimulation, but it offers stability. And stability allows growth without exhaustion. Inner peace strengthens when you stop demanding that life entertain you. Meaning does not always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels steady, repetitive, and quiet. Stoicism reframes this as strength, not dullness. Happiness becomes deeper when you stop equating intensity with value. Stoicism also emphasizes that your inner state influences your external life more than you realize. When you operate from calm instead of urgency, decisions improve, relationships stabilize, reactions soften. Inner happiness quietly reshapes the world around you without force. Another reason happiness must come from within is because external solutions can't fix internal conflicts. You can change jobs, relationships, or locations, but unresolved inner patterns follow you. Stoicism focuses on internal order first, knowing that outer changes only work when inner clarity exists. Inner happiness grows when you recognize that you don't need to escape who you are. You need to understand yourself. Stoicism encourages honest self-observation without condemnation. When judgment drops, learning begins, and learning creates growth without self-attack. Inner happiness becomes stronger when you realize that no one is coming to save you, and that this is not a tragedy, but freedom. Stoicism teaches that waiting to be rescued, understood, validated, or emotionally fulfilled by others quietly keeps you powerless. The moment you accept that responsibility for your inner state belongs to you, something shifts. You stop waiting. You stop postponing peace. You start building it through daily choices, even when motivation is low and circumstances are imperfect. Many people underestimate how much control they actually have because they focus on what they can't change. Stoicism flips that focus. It asks you to invest deeply in what is fully yours: your effort, your honesty, your restraint, your consistency. When your attention moves here, frustration drops, anxiety loses momentum, and inner happiness grows, not because life improved overnight, but because your relationship with life did. This is why Stoics placed so much importance on training the mind daily. Without training, the mind defaults to fear, comparison, and impulse. With training, it becomes steadier, clearer, and less reactive. Inner happiness isn't accidental, it's cultivated. And like any skill, it strengthens through repetition, not insight alone. If this perspective is helping you see your inner life differently, take a moment to pause, reflect, and stay with these ideas rather than rushing past them. Inner peace also grows when you stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as unfinished. Stoicism does not shame human imperfection, it expects it. Mistakes are not proof of failure, they are evidence of learning. When you stop attacking yourself for being human, mental tension eases, and ease creates room for growth without self-hatred. Another Stoic truth is that clarity often requires slowing down. Many people live in constant mental speed, reacting instead of choosing. Stoicism teaches deliberate action. When you slow your thinking, your responses sharpen, your emotions settle, and your decisions align more closely with your values. If you find these ideas grounding, this is a good moment to commit to revisiting them regularly, not as motivation, but as mental discipline. Inner happiness strengthens when you realize that peace does not come from eliminating problems, but from improving your ability to face them. Life doesn't become kinder, but you become steadier. And steadiness changes everything. Challenges no longer feel like threats to your identity. They become situations to navigate, not emotions to drown in. Stoicism also reminds us that happiness is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't depend on excitement or constant stimulation. It feels calm, stable, and internally secure. Many people overlook this kind of happiness because it doesn't look dramatic. But this quiet peace is what sustains you when enthusiasm fades and life becomes demanding. Inner happiness deepens when you commit to becoming someone you respect, even in small moments. How you speak when you're tired, how you respond when provoked, how you act when no reward is guaranteed. These moments shape your inner world far more than grand achievements ever will. If this way of thinking resonates, stay with it, return to it, apply it, and allow it to challenge how you've been measuring happiness. Stoicism teaches that the goal is not to feel good all the time, but to be okay even when you don't. That ability to remain grounded in discomfort is where real freedom lives. And that freedom, slowly and steadily, becomes happiness that no circumstance can easily take away. Inner happiness becomes unshakable when you stop seeing obstacles as interruptions and start seeing them as part of the design. Most people believe happiness exists somewhere beyond difficulty, as if challenges are detours from the real life they're supposed to be living. Stoicism rejects that idea. It teaches that the obstacle is the path. The very things you wish would disappear are the exact conditions that strengthen patience, discipline, and perspective. When you stop resisting obstacles and begin using them, your sense of peace stops being fragile. Another Stoic truth is that emotional reactions often shrink when you widen your perspective. A small inconvenience feels massive when your focus is narrow. But when you zoom out, thinking in terms of years instead of hours, most problems lose their intensity. Stoics practiced this mental zooming out regularly. They reminded themselves how brief life is, how small individual events are within the bigger picture. Inner happiness grows when you stop treating temporary discomfort as permanent damage. Stoicism also teaches that people suffer more from imagination than reality. The mind creates worst-case scenarios, replays old wounds, and anticipates rejection before it happens. Most of the distress people feel is mental rehearsal of events that may never occur. When you recognize this pattern, you stop feeding it. You bring your focus back to what is real and presence quiets fear. Inner happiness strengthens when you let go of the need to control how quickly things happen. Impatience creates tension. You want results now. You want clarity now. You want change now. Stoicism reminds you that growth follows its own timing. Forcing outcomes rarely produces peace. Patience, on the other hand, reduces unnecessary emotional friction. Another overlooked Stoic idea is that peace comes from knowing you can endure more than you think. Many people assume they will break under pressure, but often they don't. Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, small challenges that built tolerance for hardship. They trained their minds to realize that fear is usually louder than reality. Inner happiness grows when you discover your resilience firsthand. Stoicism also challenges the idea that external comfort equals internal peace. You can have a comfortable life and still feel restless, anxious, or empty. Inner happiness is not built on convenience, it's built on alignment. When your daily actions reflect your values, even simple living feels meaningful. Inner peace deepens when you stop expecting closure from everyone who hurt you. Sometimes apologies don't come. Sometimes explanations never arrive. Stoicism teaches that your healing does not depend on someone else's clarity. When you release the expectation of resolution, emotional weight lifts. Another Stoic lesson is that stability comes from routine. Small daily practices, reflection, restraint, gratitude, compound over time. Inner happiness is rarely the result of one dramatic insight. It's the product of steady habits that strengthen mental discipline. Over time, that discipline becomes natural rather than forced. Stoicism also teaches that strength is quiet. You don't need to announce growth. You don't need to display resilience. Real progress shows up in your reactions. Calmer responses, slower anger, reduced anxiety. Inner happiness reveals itself in subtle changes that only you may notice at first. Inner peace expands when you accept that you cannot avoid loss. Everything changes. People leave, roles shift, time moves. Stoics didn't deny this. They prepared for it. By remembering that nothing is permanent, appreciation increases and attachment softens. When attachment softens, fear decreases. Another truth Stoicism reveals is that happiness becomes stable when your expectations become realistic. Expecting perfection creates constant disappointment. Expecting effort creates steady progress. When you shift your expectations from flawless outcomes to consistent growth, your emotional life becomes lighter. Inner happiness ultimately grows when you stop trying to extract guarantees from an unpredictable world and instead build strength inside yourself. The world may remain uncertain, but you don't have to be. And when you become internally steady, life stops feeling like something happening to you and starts feeling like something you are capable of navigating. True happiness from a Stoic perspective is not a mood, not a reward, and not a destination you arrive at once life finally cooperates. It is a way of standing in the world. It is the calm that remains when you stop arguing with reality. It is the steadiness that develops when you stop outsourcing your peace to money, people, praise, or perfect timing. It is the quiet strength that forms when your character becomes more important than your comfort. When happiness comes from within, you are no longer emotionally held hostage by circumstances. Success doesn't inflate you. Failure doesn't crush you. Praise doesn't define you. Criticism doesn't undo you. You begin to experience life without being owned by it. This doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you grounded. You still care, you still strive, you still feel, but you are no longer shaken at your core every time something changes. Stoicism teaches that the only lasting foundation for happiness is self-mastery, not controlling the world, but controlling your responses to it, not demanding certainty, but becoming resilient in uncertainty, not avoiding pain, but enduring it with dignity. This is where peace becomes durable. This is where happiness becomes steady rather than temporary. The world will always move. People will always change. Outcomes will always remain uncertain. But when your happiness is built on perspective, discipline, integrity, and acceptance, it does not collapse every time the external world shifts. It adapts. It stabilizes. It remains. And in that steadiness, you discover something powerful. Happiness was never something you needed to chase. It was something you needed to uncover beneath fear, expectation, and dependency. Once those layers fall away, what remains is not excitement or constant pleasure, but clarity, balance, and quiet strength. That is the Stoic form of happiness. Not loud, not fragile, not borrowed, but built.